My name is Hydo and welcome to the Pantheon, where today we're going to collect some Warlocks. We're going to get them all into little jars and display them around this room. It's going to be absolutely horrifying. But Lorcan, Warlock Collector, doesn't think so. He actually quite likes the idea. He's a 7-mana 6/6 devil, and he has flying. And whenever a creature card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may pay life equal to its mana value. If you do, put it onto the battlefield under your control. It's a Warlock in addition to its other types. If a Warlock you control would die, exile it instead. Now, that's a lot of stealing. We're going to end up with Warlocks all over the gaff, aren't we? You know, they're going to be from wall to wall, and it's going to be pretty horrifying. At least for our opponents, although maybe our life total as well. But with these tips and these cards, hopefully we can find some cool ways to get around that. If you like these videos, please do consider subscribing, because I make one of these for every legendary creature ever printed, but it'll take me a while. So without further ado, let's have a look at my top 5 for the Warlock man. Mesmeric Orb. Anywhere. It doesn't matter how those creatures got there or where they came from. It doesn't matter. And Mesmeric Orb is the king of mill. 2 mana for an artifact. Whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's control mills a card, so they just put it into their graveyard. This is phenomenal. And, you know, if you've ever played Magic, which I assume you have if you've found me here, you're going to have lands, and they're going to untap each and every turn, aren't they? Well, 7 lands, that's 7 mills, potentially 7 creatures that we could steal with our Warlock. Absolutely amazing. To go along with that, mill is a big sort of theme for this deck, or at least milling your opponents. Mind Crank, 2 mana for an artifact. Whenever an opponent loses life, that player puts that many cards from the top of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Well, we're going to be dealing damage. Our commander has flying, so a nice bit of evasion. We can get in for 6. But just generally as the game goes on, people's life totals are going to go down. And if we're going to mill them at the same time, well, we're going to get a ton of value from it. Then we've got Hairstrung Koto, 6 mana for an artifact. Tap an untapped creature you control. Target player puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. This is a really cool include because the tap ability gets around Summoning Sickness. So say we get a 2 mana creature. We pay 2 life, get it onto the field. We can tap it straight away to mill our opponents. Maybe it's another creature we pay life, and we can just keep going and going and going. End up with a massive board state. It's going to be fantastic, although 6 mana is a big investment. Then we've got Dave here, my friend. He's got just one eye. He's sort of doing a weird little dab thing. Blah, 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 blah. And he lives in a sewer. So Sewer Nemesis, 4 mana for a star horror. When it enters the battlefield, choose a player. Sewer Nemesis power and toughness are each equal to the number of cards in the chosen player's graveyard. That's pretty good. We're going to be milling our opponents. Pick someone that we know has a lot of creatures, and then whenever the chosen player casts a spell, that player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. So just constant more and more mill, so this will keep growing, and then whenever we mill, we might have the chance to pay the life and get the creature. Awesome, awesome card. Although it does look like Dave. Sands the Delirium, 3 mana for an artifact to pay X and tap it. Target player puts the top X cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. So Mono Black has a lot of ways to generate tons of mana, you know, Cabal Coffers, Urborg, things like that. And let's pump it into one big sort of mill and then get whatever creatures we can out of it. Fantastic. Whoa! What have I done? What have I done? I've messed up. I've messed it up. Right, I can't move them around, but Altar of Dementia over there. 2 mana, we're going to have a lot of creatures, so the creatures we bring back, we could sacrifice them, mill equal to the power. And then finally, Sir Conrad the Grim, 5 mana for a 5/4. Legendary creature, Human Knight. Whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves the graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each opponent. So all these mills, Sir Conrad can just ping and ping and ping, deal absolutely tons of damage, and really deal with our opponents. I've realised what's going on. I've messed everything up. So, Sir Conrad the Grim, there he is, the big angry fella. So, I will have to fiddle around with this while I'm doing it, but bringing me on to number 4, an Eternity Vessel. The problem with this deck is we're going to be paying a lot of life, And we need to get that life back if we're going to keep paying that life. And Eternity Vessel is a fantastic way of doing it. 6 mana for an artifact. Enter the battlefield with X charge cards on it, where X is your life total. So you want to play this out early before we start doing all of our commander sort of shenanigans. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may have your life total become the number of charge cards on Eternity Vessel. So if we pay tons of life, go all the way down, we just play a land and we go shooting back up and we can do it all over again. So much value to be had. And here are a couple of other ways that we can gain some life. Aetherflux Reservoir, 4 mana for an artifact. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. So a nice little storm life gain. And then we can pay 50 life, deals 50 damage to a target creature or player. This will make you a big target. And, you know, I am skeptical about this card in the deck because you are going to be a big target anyway. Your life total is going to be going down and down and down. So if people wipe the board and then kill you, well, it's your own fault. But this paints an even bigger target on your back. Although our life total will generally be quite low. Then we got Dread Presence, 4 mana for a 3/3. Whenever a swamp enters the battlefield under your control, choose 1. You draw a card and you lose one life, but so you can get a nice bit of card advantage, or it deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. So a nice bit of removal and a bit of life gain there. Then we've got Sangromancer, 4 mana for a 3/3, Flying Vampire Shaman. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you gain 3 life. So nice bit of board wipe. And then once the creature's gone to the graveyard, we gain 3 life, but then we can pay that life to get it back onto our field. Or whenever an opponent discards a card, you gain 3 life. So just tons of value pouring everywhere out of our little Sangromancer. Then Whip of Erebus. We're going to have a wide board state through all the paying the life. And this is the card that we want to see. 4 mana for a legendary enchantment artifact. Creature control have lifelink. Lifelink means that whenever they deal damage, you gain that much life. So all of our creatures having lifelink, we're going to have tons of life so we can just keep paying that life to get the creature on the field. Then you can pay 4, tap it, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, gain text, exile it if it would leave. Use only as a sorcery. Then talked earlier about the massive amounts of black mana we can create in mono black. Exsanguinate, the perfect card for it. Double black and X. See, each opponent loses X life. You gain life equal to the life lost this way. So this will really pad out our life total so that we can keep paying that life, keep going. Stabbing, making warlocks, spilling them all over the place. And then finally, if we're going to have some big creatures and our commander is a flying 6/6, Loxodon Warhammer is a great way of gaining some life. 3 mana for an equipment, quick creature gets +3/+0 and has trample and lifelink and equip for 3. So we just plow in there, gain 9 life, and we've got 9 life that we can pay for all sorts of jiggery pokery. At number 3, we've got Blood Chief Ascension, and this is all about taxing our opponents and gaining life through those taxes. 1 black for an enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on it. Whenever a card is put into your opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Blood Chief Ascension has 3 or more quest counters on it, you may have that player lose 2 life. If you do, you gain 2 life. So this works exceptionally well with all of the mill cards that we had. So every time we mill a card, they're going to lose 2 life, we're going to gain 2 life, and just do this over and over again. Tons and tons of value. So good. Then a couple of other sort of tax card. Marchesa's Decree, 4 mana for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, you may become the monarch. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's control loses 1 life. So this disincentivizes people from attacking us. You know, we get the monarch, draw some cards, but then we could potentially set it up so that our opponents are on a low life total. If they attack in, they're going to die. This is the sort of thing that we want to be doing. Then we've got Polluted Bonds. And Polluted Bonds, 5 mana for an enchantment. Whenever a land comes into play under an opponent's control, that player loses 2 life and gains 2 life. And you gain 2 life. So our opponents, they always want to be playing lands, aren't they? You know, they want to progress their own board state. So they're just going to have to slog through this. It's going to pad our life total, really sort of cripple them. And the artwork, it's lovely. The colours on it are just so nice. Then we've got Revenge of Ravens. 4 mana for an enchantment. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, that creature's control loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So again, this can really disincentivize people from attacking us, and we just get an absolute ton of value from it. Now on to number 2. And at number 2, well, what have we got? We've got Sepulchral Primordial and just a couple of other ways to reanimate things, because we're going to really focus on our commander and stealing things with our commander, but you can't always have your commander on the field, can you? Sometimes it's just not going to work out this way. And this is a great way to build up a board state. 7 mana for a 5/4 with Intimidate. When it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may put up to 1 target creature from that player's graveyard into the battlefield under your control. So all the mill that we're doing, we're going to have absolutely tons of choice. It's going to be wonderful. You're going to have an army in a can. Which brings me on to another way of doing this. Limdul the Necromancer. 7 mana for a 4/4. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is put into a graveyard from play, you may pay 2. If you do, return that card to play under your control. If it's a creature, it's a zombie in addition to its other types. So this is just a replacement for our commander, a much worse version, but you can also pay 2 to regenerate target zombie. So there is some upside, making things into zombies instead of warlocks. And also, if you're reanimating with this, they aren't going to be warlocks. So when they go to the graveyard, your opponent's graveyards, they're going to die, but then we can bring them back using our commander. So it's all the circle of life, isn't it? It's all the circle of life. Then we've got Hedonist's Trove, another great way of getting your opponent's creatures. 7 mana for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from target opponent's graveyard. You may play land cards exiled this way. You may cast non-land cards exiled with Hedonist's Trove. You can't cast more than one of these spells each turn. So really fill up someone's graveyard and then just steal it all, and then we can just keep churning out value. Absolutely fantastic. And then there's Geth, Lord of the Vault. 6 mana, 5/5 with Intimidate. If you play black and X, put target artifact or creature card for the converted mana cost X from your opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, tapped. Then that player mills X card. So another great mill card, and a reanimation card as well. Just does everything. And you can steal Sol Rings with it. Things like that. Great value. Then we've got Rakshasa Debaser. 6 mana for a 6/6. Whenever it attacks, put target creature card from defending player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Then you can encore it for 8 mana, which means exile it from your graveyard. You get 3 copies, or however many copies. If say you're playing an 18-person commander game, you get 17 copies. Why are you doing this to yourself? I don't want to even think about it. But all of those can attack that turn because they have haste, and you get loads of creatures back from your opponent's graveyard. Then we've got Grave Betrayal. 7 mana for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you don't control dies, return it to the battlefield under your control with an additional 1/1 counter on it. And it's a black zombie in addition to its other colours and types. Really great, powerful effect. Exactly what we want in our commander deck. Wonderful. So much value. Then we got Rise of the Dark Realms. 9 mana. Put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. This can just win you the game outright. We've done all that milling, milled everyone. All of our creatures have been dying. We just bring them all back. Bing, bang, bosh, you're dead. Which brings me on to my number 1 choice. And at number 1, we've got Kundras Closet. This is a very unique card in the deck, and flickering, well, I've showed you a couple of enter the battlefield effect creatures, but this works fantastically with the stealing aspect of the deck. So, the problem with our commander is that when a Warlock dies, we exile it, so we can't get it back. But 5 mana artifact. At the beginning of your end step, you may exile target creature you control. Then return that card to the battlefield under your control. So this is going to exile one of our Warlocks. It's going to come back. It'll be a new game object, so it isn't a Warlock anymore. And because it's exiled it, not died, our commander won't exile it forever. So it comes back under our control. And that's the important thing, because a lot of these sort of effects, they come back under the owner's control. But we can keep things forever. So it's a nice little reset. We get an extra into the battlefield effect, and it just works so well. I couldn't find any other cards that really had that in mono black, but here are just some other cool cards I'd put in the deck. Dawn of the Dead, one of my favourite enchantments ever. 5 mana, at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to play. That creature gains haste until end of turn, remove it from the game at end of turn. So it's like Whipper Erebus, except if you sacrifice the creature or it dies somehow on your turn, it does go back into your graveyard so you can reuse it again. Lovely value. Then there's Witch of the Moors. With all the life gain shenanigans, this works well. 5 mana for a 4/4 with Death Touch. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent sacrifices a creature and you return up to 1 target creature from your graveyard to your hand. So excellent value engine, can really, offer you an apple, poisoned apple, but, it's an apple. Apple. Wake the Dead, double black and X for an instant. You can cast it only during combat on your opponent's turn, so a nice little surprise blocker. You can go, boo, I've got loads of blockers. Return X target creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sacrifice those creatures at the beginning of the next end step. So this does put the creatures back into your graveyard, but you can get absolutely tons of value from loads of enter the battlefield effects. Works absolutely a treat. A treat, an apple treat. Treats, apple. Thank you very much for watching. I've enjoyed making this video. It's been quite fun. If you like it, please do like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.